Welcome to the Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Hello, Patrick Donohoe here, news editor with the Irish Farmers Journal. Last week, British voters decided to leave the European Union. We've been covering day-to-day developments on farmersjournal.ie, and we've more in-depth analysis on what it means for you and your farm in this week's Irish Farmers Journal. My colleague Amy Fitzgibbon speaks to Rowena Dwyer, the IFA's chief economist, about the immediate and long-term fallout from Brexit.
So, Rowena, this is really shocking news for our agricultural sector. What is the immediate fallout of this decision, in your view?
Yeah, Amy, it is. I think, to put it mildly, the consequences of this are not ones that we really, as a sector, thought we'd have to face. But it has happened now, and what we're looking at is dealing with both short-term and long-term consequences. And in terms of the short-term consequences, the immediate issue is the exchange rate fluctuations between the euro and sterling. Already we've seen sterling has weakened. It's unclear what will actually happen in the next few days and weeks. And what does that mean in practical terms? Well, a weaker sterling means lower product prices for exports to the UK. And we know that our market in the UK is so important. For listeners, the really important thing that our government and other institutions do is get some certainty on the table pretty soon to stabilise the currencies.
And how do they do that?
I think they do it by coming out and accepting that this decision has been taken now, and that there is no point in maybe lamenting it. The point to do now is to look forward and say what will be the best outcome for the EU and for the UK in developing their new relationship.
And tariffs are going to come in just overnight. Negotiations are going to take 2 years at least. So is there going to be any immediate change, do you think, for our agricultural sector? No, it's a great point to make, Amy, and I suppose it's worthwhile anyone who is trying to get their heads around this understanding it. As things are set out in the EU treaty, what happens first is the UK, they've had their vote. They actually have to notify the EU Council of their intention to leave. And that starts a process that takes a minimum of 2 years, a process of negotiations. So as of now and as of for the next 2 years, the UK is a member of the EU and they will be negotiating their exit strategy. What does that mean? It means we still have access to we still have access to the single market. There are no tariffs, there are no quotas, there are no changes in regulations. Things will remain as they are in terms of trading. But what will be under pressure now is some form of consistency or certainty as to how exchange rate movements will go, and that has an implication for prices. So, for example, would that affect the value of, say, Irish beef exports?
Look, the issue that is it. But we have been here before, so I suppose we need to take that in mind. As things stand today, it has weakened. We were actually back at this point only in January of this year. There have been times in the past where sterling was even weaker. It is not ideal, absolutely not, and it will, if it continues to weaken, it would have, of course, an impact on prices.
So, longer term, the value of Irish beef exports to the UK market last year was 1.1 billion. 1 billion was the value of Irish dairy exports, and 350 million was the value of our pig meat exports to the UK market. So, longer term then, what is the best case scenario for Irish agriculture in terms of the type of trade agreement the UK could negotiate with the EU? And long term, are those figures likely to be weakened by the Brexit?
The likelihood is, Amy, I'll start with your last question there. I would expect that exports to the UK will actually continue to grow. It is still a growing market. The issue is they will not grow potentially at the same rate that they would have done without barriers. So what kind of a best case scenario is there? The I suppose, market access that minimises any barriers to trade as far as possible. What do I mean by that? It would most certainly not be in any Irish exporters' interest for there to be tariffs applied on Irish exports or on UK imports coming into Ireland. What I suppose the big concern is that we're one of now what will be 27 member states, and there will have to be a balance found between agreeing a new trading relationship with the UK that is positive and also recognising the fact that they have voted to leave and therefore they cannot enjoy the exact same membership benefits that we all have. That is going to be a significant challenge. But the scenario that I believe the Irish government and IFA and Irish farmers will be looking for is that as far as possible, minimisation of any imposition of barriers to trade. That would add costs, add delays, and add, just again, reduce the competitiveness or make it less attractive to export to the UK.
And what about the relationship between Northern Ireland then and the Republic? How will that be affected, say, in terms of dairy processing?
Yeah, one can speculate, and the only thing you can say with any certainty is it will not be as straightforward. And in the short term, it will not be clear, and it's working through to identify how will issues such as ingredients that will now be technically coming from a non-EU country be treated for the purpose of processing and further export to outside markets, particularly markets outside the EU. Those are the issues that are very real. They're very complicated, but will have to be dealt with. And just to give some other practical examples, Amy, you know, the issue of farmers whose farms cross the border at the moment. There are going to be issues there in relation to their cap payments and so on. Again, I think most people and most who are involved in the negotiations will be seeking to ensure that individuals are not disadvantaged and that enterprises are not undermined by this. But there is a lot of detail, and it is difficult that we are actually having to face into this.
I was speaking to the Minister for Agriculture yesterday, and he said the biggest fear in terms of our beef markets is South America using the UK as a backdoor for importing beef into Europe, instead of trying to get it through Mercosur, which we managed to get beef out of this year. So how likely a scenario is this?
It's a very real fear, but I think it may also have to be tempered with the fact that the priority I expect for the UK will be to concentrate on their trade negotiation with the EU. It is a more valuable market, even for them, and therefore I think absolutely we know that the Campaign to Leave have identified this as one of the things they would like to do, not be shackled by the trade negotiations that the EU are doing, and to negotiate with individual partners. But I do think we'll see in the short to medium term that the focus of the UK trading parties will be to actually negotiate the best deal they can with the EU, who they've now just chosen to leave. There is one other area that is hugely important to Irish farmers and the agri-food sector. It is the implications for the EU budget. More than any other sector, obviously, in Ireland. We will be impacted by changes to this. The key issue, I think, revolves around the fact that the UK is currently a net contributor. As I said, they're going to remain part of the EU, so for 2 years, whatever their contribution is and the rules that are set out will remain.
It was something like 8 billion.
That's correct. They're net contributors of approximately 8 billion. It fluctuates slightly every year, but you're absolutely right, which means they make a net contribution to the Common Agricultural Policy. The issue is we have had a cap reform that was quite difficult to negotiate, and farmers have certainty at the moment as to their payments between now and 2020. I think we will be saying very clearly to the Irish government that as part of the overall EU negotiations, that there has to be certainty around the EU budget up until 2020 in the negotiations. Whatever the time frame is, that was something that was very seriously negotiated, and it would be unacceptable that there would be changes to that, and allowing people or putting people in the situation where they wouldn't actually have certainty around that.
So we want that to stay the same at least for the next 4 years. And finally, what are the other main issues then that will be of importance in these negotiations?
I suppose you're getting into the detail then of issues such as animal health, which I've mentioned before when we were talking about this in advance of the vote. The fact that we have a shared land border and that we at the moment comply obviously with shared EU regulations. It just has given a consistency to the priorities and the cooperation that Ireland and Northern Ireland have had in terms of tackling animal disease and so on. I think it will continue for the most part because, again, it comes down to it. The UK market will look to continue to export into the EU market and will by necessity then really have to keep to the same standards. But it is a concern over the more long term. And another area that I suppose could impact on farmers quite practically will be the rules around taxation of the supply of goods and services, again, EU, non-EU, and one really practical one you would think about there, farmers who may purchase some of their inputs in Northern Ireland at the moment, and the VAT refund, and just areas like that the rules, once you go outside the EU, are just more complex, and in effect, that's what the UK have voted for, to be a non-EU member.
Okay, well, I'm sure there'll be a lot more to discuss on this subject in the coming weeks, months and even years. So thank you very much, Rowena.
Thank you very much, Amy.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Farmers at the Newry show had a mixed reaction to the news of Brexit. Some were positive about the outcome, but others told Amy McShane that they were uncertain about the future.
We don't know the details, what we put our judgment on really. All the business has to be done.
And so much money comes from Europe, especially for farmers and subsidies. Do you think that that's going to all come to an end now, or will the government start to fund it themselves?
Unknown quantity, with that much pressure for money to go for health service, all them other things. Farming's not a big thing to the British government, no matter what party's in. We'll be way at the bottom of the line.
James Graham from Portadown, and we breed Hereford cattle. I think everybody was taken back yesterday at the outcome. Nobody's seen that actually coming. We are where we are. We have to look on the positive side of things. Never mind all this negativity. We've got to embrace it in the local governments now in Northern. We've got to embrace what we can export, what deals can be done for the beef industry. Can new markets be seen, which there is clearly out there, and goodness knows in every dark cloud there's a silver lining, so maybe they will be able to do a lot more exporting out of the north here. So it's up to the local politicians now to get the best deals. They've got to look after their own people in the north.
And for farmers in the south, the UK is one of the biggest exporters, especially for beef. How do you think that's going to affect you in the north? Is it going to drive down prices?
We've got to look at the bigger thing here over this next 5 years of what exports that they can take forward outside the EU. If there's markets there in the Middle East or the Far East, it could open up more exports going out rather than curtailed within the EU.
And Northern Ireland receives 326 million in subsidies from EU. Do you see the British government funding?
Absolutely. I think that, listen, people know that the backbone of the whole of Ireland is the farming industry. They can't be ignored. And I have every faith that Martin McGuinness and Arlene Foster will step up to the mark and deliver that for the people. And as I say, they've got to take what they can out of this here, what the future is of this. Could be better things come out of it than we haven't foreseen.
So you're positive for the future then?
I didn't realise that this was going to happen. Nobody did. It's got to take where we are and try and drive forward.
Shocked yesterday morning?
No, I wasn't.
And can I ask you how you voted?
To get out.
You voted to leave?
Yeah.
What do you think it's going to mean now for the north and UK? You obviously think it's going to be a good thing.
Well, I think there's a lot of bureaucracy in Europe. I think as well as that, perhaps it'll maybe do away with some of that bureaucracy. A lot of things seem to be European controlled. We would be better controlling it ourselves.
Yes. And are you a dairy or a beef farmer? You're a dairy farmer, okay.
Yes. Could cause complications now. There seems to be a lot of northern milk it's going to go across the border. I don't know, we'll just have to wait and see. There's a lot of ifs, ands and buts as yet, but things can't go any worse than what they are.
Francis King from BMWR Young Farmers Club.
So what did you think yesterday morning when you heard the news?
I was completely shocked. Thought we were going to stay. I was hoping we would stay. It's hard to know what's going to happen now.
And would you hope to take over the family farm one day?
Yeah.
Are you worried, especially for young farmers, in terms of subsidies and cap? What do you think it's going to mean for you?
Yeah, because nobody knows what's going to happen. Or is single farm payment still going to be there? What's the UK going to do? They don't even know themselves. That's the problem.
We're the only part of the UK that has any land border with the rest of the EU.
Hopefully there's no border controls or anything, because the public's one of our biggest suppliers and buyers. It'd be hard to put borders back in there, especially with all the work that's done with the process. And then beef prices could go down, beef could go up, no one knows. We're buying stuff off us, it's going to be dear, we're not going to want to do it. And then they're going to get beef somewhere else. So put our beef prices right down.
The grants that were due to be paid over the next 5 years, that was all to the European funded. I can see that all going on standstill now. Nobody's wanted
Do you think the British government's going to take that over and start paying for it?
Anybody that thought that the head was in the clouds, as far as I'd be concerned, they'd look after their own first, and we're very much second best. I think Scotland's going to put a real spanner in the works now, because I can see them going, and I think if we had any sense over here, we'd be looking at ways to join them.
And for the beef industry, do you think that this could maybe be a positive and open up new markets?
I don't think so. We're having it hard enough getting rid of our beef to a European market without threat to a worldwide market. Our product's good, and remember, probably the beef end of it, it's been better now than it has been for a few years previous.
One possible positive is that there's too much bureaucracy. Do you think this could mean the end of it?
It probably is that, but that's why probably they should address some of the problems within themselves without dictating as to what anybody else can do. The cap reform and the single farm payment. Like that, the single farm payment is basically what's keeping farmers in Northern Ireland going at the minute.
Yeah. What kind of farmer are you?
Dairy.
A dairy farmer, okay. Are you worried about subsidies, single farm payment, cap?
Sure, it's going anyway.
And can I ask you how you voted? You voted out?
No, most of the farmers I've been talking to did vote out. So
possibly open up new markets?
Hopefully it does. That's what we're hoping for.
It's just new territory and we haven't been there for...
Do you see things settling down in the next few weeks and few months?
So, yeah. Even the markets you could see yesterday, I know it was only a day, but they didn't finish out much worse than they were the day before, really. I know it's only a day, but I think it was a shock, it was a reaction to it, and they don't like uncertainty, but I think, people get used to it and get their head around. But as Robert said, it takes time.
There were no drastic changes, I don't think.
Europe need us as much as we need them.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Meanwhile, County Down tractor dealer Arthur O'Neill and County Cavan agricultural contractor Brian McGahern discussed the consequences of the Brexit vote for their business with our news correspondent Odile Evans.
Arthur, you're a tractor dealer here, literally on the border, aren't you? And you said you went to bed last night thinking that...
But that we'd be waking up this morning that we'd be still in the EU.
And that didn't happen?
And that didn't happen. I was very shocked.
Yeah.
We do not want to go back to the old days when we'd have to load up, go into Newry, go from Newry into the customs, and then into Carrigan, up in Carrigan and Dundalk. And for to deliver something to a customer down south, it would take a whole day in clearance alone. Are you with me?
Yeah, but it's no longer, like back then it was a border between the UK and Ireland. Now it's a border between the UK and the EU, which is a bigger border, really, isn't it?
It's a bigger border, sure, and it's going to leave it that the currency is the problem. We were always buying our goods with the sterling cheaper from Southern Ireland, and now they reckon that the euro's going to be stronger than the sterling.
Well, the sterling is doing this all morning.
I know it is, and last night it was real good closing. And the next thing was the other way. So I think it's going to create very big problems.
Is it having an immediate impact on your business here, buying stuff, or you just stopped buying today?
Well, everyone's wondering where we are. We're wondering about what we have already bought and sold in Northern Ireland. Would we fit get enough euro or enough sterling to cover our euro to pay our suppliers down south?
Yeah.
That's just where you can run into a loss here with the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because nobody's going to say, well, whatever you losing there on that deal, we make it up. It's not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's a shock. It's a big shock. We've already lived with difference. We lived with the punt. We lived with the euro and was up and down, fluctuating this years, as you probably know, and now we're out completely.
Scary, isn't it? Now it'll probably take a few years to get out.
And it's the people that's along the border is going to notice it more so, because if you're in the heart of London, you're not. If you're heart of Belfast, you're not.
Yeah, you're still going to go to the shop and get their food and have the same situation as usual.
Yeah. It's a bigger problem. It's going to leave the goods home, I think, from Southern Ireland to North, a lot more expensive down south.
Yeah.
Anyone exporting is going to find it difficult, I think, if the euro gets strong.
Yeah. How about yourself then? Brian, what's your second name again?
Brian McGahern.
McGahern, and you're a contractor in the south or the north?
In the south, back in County Cavan.
So what's your...
I don't know. People are afraid, I suppose, that when they leave, the consequence they're going to have on the price of cattle and the price of milk. And that'll happen instantly. Because meat producers and that will probably capitalise on it for a start, like.
And there's a lot of trade that goes across the border. Sheep always go down south, don't they? And pigs kind of go north, and so that's going to have...
Yeah, it's hard to know what the knock-on effect will be, but it'll probably take years for it to sort itself out. I don't know whether... Sometimes people might say it could be a good thing that the EU is getting too big with too many rules and regulations. Maybe it's a wake-up call for the EU as well. I don't know.
To improve practices. But what do you think of David Cameron resigning?
Well, I suppose if it was in your own house and you were trying to settle an argument and it went against you, you'd say you go and do it your own way, sure you have to walk away.
Yeah.
It's very hard for him staying there to sort out something that he didn't want.
I think what scares a lot of people too is you have a situation where you could have Boris Johnson as Prime Minister and Donald Trump as President of America. Would
that'll not probe too long, I'd say.
But jeez, it's a scary
It's very
political
scary
situation.
at the moment. You see, the sad thing about this here is that the farmers stand to lose a lot in the north by coming out. That's in the farmer lane. Like, I think even the testing of the cattle in Northern Ireland, the farmers didn't have to pay for it. As far as I know, it's EU money that was funding that.
Yeah.
I just mentioned that to you, Brian.
The knock-on effect would be unthinkable, like.
And I suppose before they joined the EU, the UK had this cheap food policy. And I think the fear is that they'll go back to that, and then it'll be a way of the Mercosur countries of bringing their beef in and flooding the market that way, isn't it?
That's exactly it. But it's also probably another thing with this border here, Northern Ireland. I know it's a EU border now, not an Irish border, as to say. What's going to happen there? They're talking strongly about building a stronger border. This is what's been shouted for some of our politicians in Northern Ireland.
But how could that work when you have roads that literally go Ireland, UK, Ireland, UK? Like, how does that work?
It's very hard to know. But like,
the only way it can work is to go back to the old days where they put the cars on again, the customs on the north and the south.
Yeah.
And if you've got going across the border with your vehicle, it sees there, because you've done a jump across, as they call it, from the frontier. You're supposed to go the legal way, go through customs posts.
The Scottish First Minister this morning has said that she's going to do her best to see how Scotland can remain within the EU while England and whatever leaves. Would the same thing be negotiated for the North, maybe?
It's possible that Northern Ireland will look for that. And also it could be possible that England has voted out, but it's not written in law, right?
Yeah. Exactly. But then when David Cameron resigns, you kind of think, well, someone's going to push them, like whoever takes in that role is going to
be over the man then in charge, so they're going to have to lot. They'll probably push for it to get it sorted fairly fast. I can't see it dragging down the road for 2-3 years. I'd say they'll probably have a move before that. The only thing is, like everything, is an agreement that it's just the EC doesn't walk away from England because they pulled out. Is there a time scale for it?
It is a contract, isn't it?
A contract between the two countries, that they don't say, right, that's it, you're out this morning, that's it, you go your own. What about all the subsidies that farmers are entitled to? Is it still going to come for the year and probably next year? I don't know.
It's hard to know.
It's difficult to call. It's something it's a very big one. We're facing with a very big challenge and a big change.
The Irish Farmers Journal Weekly Podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
The European Commissioner for Health finally said this week that glyphosate will be authorised for another 18 months. This is the active ingredient in products like Roundup and other herbicides, the most widely used around the world. Our digital editor, Thomas Hubert, joins me now to explain what's happening here. Where are we with glyphosate, Thomas?
Well, it's been a saga, Patrick, really, for the past few months. There's been successive meetings of expert committees sent by EU member states. We started with a proposal from the European Commission to renew the product for 15 years, went down to 10, 7, and now we're down to 18 months. That's was proposed to another vote of those experts last week. Still no majority, so it reverted back to the Commission itself, and the Commissioner decided to wait until the European Chemicals Agency, ECHA, finishes its own assessment of glyphosate next year. So we have until the end of next year to see what happens.
You mentioned the French vote there, and you've been following the news in your own native language. And why is Paris so strongly opposed to glyphosate and the use of products that contain glyphosate?
Well, there's been, first of all, conflicting health reports. Some experts at WHO level, the international organization, said there was a probable link between glyphosate and cancer, but that's been dismissed by other European agencies. So there is some degree of doubt, even though it's very tenuous, that has been feeding the decisions of the French authorities. You need to remember that opinion polls on the continent, especially in France, are very strongly against glyphosate. It's a mainstream media issue. It's in the news every day whenever there is a meeting of experts at EU level. The Greens are in government in France, and they are part of the government coalition. They've been strongly opposed to it as well, influencing decision there. And there is a very strong level of anti-Monsanto activism as well, some kind of anti-globalization movement active there as well. The result of that is that France has already put restrictions on glyphosate. No later than last week, they banned more than 130 products that have glyphosate and another chemical, saying that the two together could be dangerous, and they didn't want to take the risk.
How close were we, Thomas, to seeing glyphosate and products, they said, using glyphosate taken off the shelves of Ireland and the other countries in Europe before this vote was taken to extend it.
Yeah, it's all to be played for in the next 18 months. It depends to a very large degree on what this European Chemical Agency's HR report will say. If they are reassuring, maybe one country, such as maybe Germany or another big country, will change their vote. The vote in those expert committees is a qualified majority vote, so you need more than half the countries and nearly 2/3 of the population represented. So if a big country makes a different decision, that could tip the balance towards reauthorizing glyphosate for a longer period. But that hinges a lot on that report that we will only get during 2017.
Excellent, very interesting, Thomas. Thank you.
You're listening to the Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.
Now let's follow Anthony Jordan, our backstage reporter, at last Friday's RTE Country Music Awards. He met Irish Farmers Journal readers who won much coveted tickets to the event.
Anthony Jordan here from the Irish Farmers Journal. I'm here with Tony and Kathy Naughton. Tony and Kathy, where are you from?
Canberra, County Galway.
County Galway, good Galway people. I'm a Mayo man myself, so you've obviously broken my heart in the last week. You won tickets on the Farmers Journal for this, you did?
That's right, indeed, yeah.
And come here to me, you're big fans of country music, obviously.
Yeah,
we are. Are you aware of the nominations and the nominees?
Well, we voted for Mike Denver. So,
what do you think about the song of the year, or the song that of all time, almost country music? Who do you think's going to win that?
It's hard to know. Four Roads to Glenreddy is a huge...
Big Tom. He was here on. You're obviously big fans of Big Tom.
We actually went to see him in Ennis a few weeks ago.
And who would be your favourite entertainer that'll be here? Who are you hoping to meet tonight?
Mike Denver.
Tony, about you now?
Yeah, Mike Denver, Robert myself, they'll be our favourites.
And you'd obviously enjoy the country music scene, would you go to many dances and that kind of stuff?
Oh, we would, yeah.
We would locally,
we go 20-mile radius of ourselves.
Yeah, and where would be a big stronghold for country music around the Galway region?
We go to Ballinasloe, Ennis, McWilliam Park, Claremorris.
McWilliam Park is obviously a stronghold in the west of Ireland for country music. Lads, I hope you enjoy yourselves tonight. It'll be a fantastic night for all. It'll be going late into the night, do you think?
Yeah.
Maybe coppers later on?
Never know.
I'm here with Andrew and Lauren, both from Armagh. Lads, very welcome.
Thank you.
I'm looking at you here. Are you a Nathan Carter man or are you a Daniel O'Donnell man?
Well, this girl's a bit of a Daniel O'Donnell man.
You're Daniel O'Donnell. You like Daniel? You be into it?
Yeah, be into a bit of Daniel.
What's your favourite Daniel O'Donnell
song?
Oh,
Jesus. That's being put on the spot. Yeah, probably. I can't pick. They're all too good.
Who's your favourite artist here? Who would you be here to kind of
Definitely
see?
Nathan Carter.
And are you obviously, is it Wagon Wheel? Is that the one?
Oh, yes.
So if you were to pick like the best song ever in country music, Wagon Wheel is the one you're
100%. Hands down.
Andrew, what about yourself? You're a big fan of country music.
Serious fan of country music, yeah.
Any particular female artist that you'd be interested in? That'd be here tonight.
Philomena Bagley.
What a wonderful woman.
Yeah,
what a wonderful woman.
Fantastic.
And come here to me. Now, speaking of Philomena, what's your favourite Philomena song?
Oh, Blanket on the Ground.
Blanket on the Ground?
Blanket on the Ground, yeah.
You'd be singing along to it. Would that be on your iPod?
It's on the iPod, it's in the CD, in the car, it's in my head, it's in the shower. It's everywhere that song it is.
And Lauren, talk us about your iPod listing. Would you have a lot of country music on it? Or would it be, say, Hotline Bling by Drake?
There's a bit of country on there, yeah, definitely. I mean, Andrew here wrote me into this, so I'm down for the night for the bit of crack.
And would you be one for the Kayleys, say, the old dancing, the old rigmaroles?
I wouldn't say I'm the best driver, but I give it a go anyway, yeah.
With a few sherries,
with a few white wines.
Here, will this last well into tonight, Andrew? Is there any coppers tonight? No.
We'll save ourselves. There's a great dance hall beside us, the Moy Inn. So we'll save ourselves, called the Randale, formerly the Moy Inn, so we'll save ourselves for there tomorrow night.
Guys, thank you very, very much and enjoy your night.
Yeah, thank you.
We hope that you're enjoying this Irish Farmers Journal podcast, brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy. Find out more at farmersjournal.ie.
Finally, Irish Country Living editor Mairead Lavery visited the exhibition on Marilyn Monroe's dress collection at the Museum of Style Icons in Newbridge, and she cannot recommend it enough.
One of the things that impresses me the most here is the dress from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes.
Well,
the red.
Prefer blondes, but go around. Niagara, Richard Avedon photo shoot, Let's Make Love. No Business Like Show Business is a fantastic piece. But my favourite one in the dresses is Something Like It Hot.
Hot, yes.
And that was such a fantastic, funny movie. It's rated in the top 100 movies. It's the funniest movie. I knew Tony Curtis, so it's great to see this here. we estimate this 200 to 400,000. This probably would sell for $1 million. It's so iconic. This was so risque at the time. You see how it is cut at the neckline with the illusion there's a false sort of bra inside that you don't see. It looks so flesh toned. That was hard to get approved by the studios to get that.
Yes, but that was tough enough.
It was, but it fitted her so neatly that they had to lift her up onto the piano to sing the song that she serenaded Tony Curtis with.
All right.
So that's.
The exhibition is going on for how long?
So the exhibition, we're open every day, 7 days a week until July 25th. After coming from a month in London, Design Centre, where it was the most highly attended exhibition they've ever done there. So it's here for a month, and then after here, we sail it on the Queen Mary from New York to Southampton. So we take it to New York, we do some TV shows, then we put it on the ship, and we exhibit on the ship and give some talks onto Southampton. Then we go to Asia, and then South America, and then New York, and then we'll have a big exhibition in Los Angeles in November, and the auction is November 19th and 20th.
November the 19th. And you have the dresses from the iconic dresses from so many movies, you have personal wear, you have personal belongings,
her shoes,
you have her drawings, shoes,
her gloves from the 70 or 80.
Yeah, absolutely. Her wedding shoes.
Marilyn Miller.
Yeah.
This little pony skin handbag, which was bought in Mexico, and of course she was in Mexico not long before she passed away. And this is her little
her money,
her wallet, and 3 1 peso bills inside in it,
right.
which is amazing. And this handbag with her, her compact and her lipstick.
And where
her
did where did it all come from? How somebody has had this wrapped in cellophane for the last 50 years.
So it comes from 2 sources. Most of the career gowns come from David Gainsborough Roberts, who is a gentleman who loves Marilyn Monroe, who lives in Jersey. He's from the UK but lives in Jersey. And he started buying Marilyn Monroe in 1988. The total value of his cost of his purchases, because he loved Marilyn, she had no museum, she had no family, he wanted to protect her. He spent about €250,000.
And it's worth about 250 million now. Possibly.
But as I said, what you see here is insured for 5 million.
Right.
So that's fantastic. And then the other part of the collection comes from the estate of Lee Strasberg, who of course was the beneficiary in Marilyn's will. She left everything to Lee Strasberg. Everyone knows Lee Strasberg and Paula were acting coach and friend, and Paula, his wife, was a dear friend. And
support that she probably never had in her life.
Exactly, the support that she had, and they were very good friends, and she left everything to him. And so these items actually were shipped from California in 1966, she passed away in 62, to New Jersey storage units, and pretty much stayed there until now. And so my job is, which is the really great part of my job, is the discovery part, is uncovering and finding new stuff, and like that little Minaudier, and finding all the little compartments in that, or the Blanc Pawn watch, which is actually the only piece of fine jewellery that she owned.
Right.
Even though it's diamonds, and she loved diamonds and all that.
It was all paste.
Exactly, it's all costume.
The Irish Farmers Journal podcast, online at farmersjournal.ie, on the Irish Farmers Journal app, and on iTunes every Thursday. Brought to you by Ornua, the home of Irish dairy.